This is what the day in our life looks like ever since we quit our jobs.
And thanks to our side quest, we started when we were working and now we do this full time. Started the supper club 2 years ago and didn't quit our jobs till 6 months ago. It took us a year and a half to reach there to make sure that we would be able to turn it into a business that actually has returns for us. So take that time, test out the waters, see what you like. Sometimes you may think that you like something, it might flop in 3 months and 6 months. It's all right if that means you need to stick it out at your job for a couple of more years. I think it's really important to think of your future, think of your financial stability. That was definitely one of the main things for us that we focused on, that we need to be making enough money before we can actually think of leaving our jobs.
Nowadays, when we look at our monthly revenue, we make about 2.5 lakhs to 3 lakhs depending on the month. So a supper club is essentially people coming together to have an intimate meal at someone's home. How we do it is that we have a 4-course meal. Restaurants today are so ambiance focused, and we've realized that diners don't really want, they just want good conversations and a good meal.
We hosted in our house with 8 people, mostly strangers. Sometimes they can be people who know each other and they come together.
I actually grew up not really enjoying to cook food. Like, I had no interest in cooking till I went to college. I had gotten this like tiny pressure cooker. My mom sent me with dal and chawal and being like, bana lena. And like for the first 2 years, I made nothing. I went to college in the US. Through the the semesters, we always had like canteen and mess and all of that. So we really never had to make food. I only actually started to cook when my first year got over, the summer after that, because I decided to stay back on campus. The canteens in the summers, they didn't run. So there was no genuine access to food. I started learning because of that, and the idea wasn't ever to like cook different food. It was just like, I need to eat. So with that in mind, like I think the first thing I ever made was like a sandwich, and then I elevated myself to a pasta, and I started watching a lot of videos. So YouTube actually taught me a whole lot of like what can be cooked. First summer, in fact, I started telling my mom that, hey, I'm cooking all of these things, and she was like, oh, what are you cooking? I was like, sandwiches and pasta. She's like, what happened to the pressure cooker I gave you? So then I was like, oh yeah, I can make something. So she told me, and the measurements were in like, ek chutki ye dalo, yahan tak pani hona chahiye. And I was like, how is this like measurement? So we learned through that process of like, okay, how does a pressure cooker work and all of that. And it was my last year of college when I was actually really confident of my cooking skill. And my last year of college is when I actually had a kitchen for the first time in my dorm room.
It's funny because it's the opposite for me, whereas like when I was growing up, I was always really excited to be in the kitchen. I used to help my mom, but I always kind of stuck to the baking and the desserts and things like that. But when I did go to college, same as all of us, I learned the basics of like, this is how you make poha or upma, or this is how you can make dal to sustain yourself.
The year I graduated, Trump became president for the first time, and they all got rescinded because it was just like, oh, we don't know what Trump will do with immigration, so we can't be sure. I was like, I'll come back and I'll find a job in India where at least I'm accepted, like I don't have to like fight for occupation. My first job was in digital marketing. My first salary was, I think, 45K, and my last salary was, I think, close to 2.5 lakhs per month.
I started off as an associate producer. My first salary was a measly 30,000 per month. That was in 2018. And by the time I quit my last job, which was in 2025, I was making about 1,20,000.
I met Natasha in 2019, and I think in 2020 is when we started posting video content. And Natasha comes from a background of video production, so it was kind of like she was the reason why I started posting video content, and that's when we really like blew up, and hobby kind of became a second job.
When we did start working together, I was basically helping with the shooting aspect of it or the editing aspect of it, and eventually it turned into me cooking, and I think that came from all the community-led activities that we used to kind of do.
When I cook, I don't hear, see anything else. Like, it's the most therapeutic thing for me because there is so much noise in the world when you're just sitting, and all that noise goes away when you're cooking, at least for me. So our first supper club, I think we spent in total 25,000 rupees. 15,000 of that went into getting all the crockery and cutlery. About 3,000 rupees in toiletries and linens and printouts and all these other like materials that you'll need, physical materials for the table. About 7,000 to 7,500 was spent in food.
First supper club, which was for 6 people, I think we priced it at 3,500 for a 4-course meal, sold out in 6 minutes, which was the most exciting thing for us. And we were like, oh my God, we've done it. We've like broken the internet. Everybody wants to come over to our house
Let's
and eat
quit our
food.
jobs tomorrow.
Let's quit our jobs tomorrow. Obviously that was a first time thing. It's never happened again. I think it's very easy to think that like, here is my passion and this is all I need to follow, without actually putting time into figuring out how you'll actually be able to sustain yourself. So like us, we started the supper club 2 years ago and didn't quit our jobs till 6 months ago. It took us a year and a half to reach there, to make sure that we would be able to turn it into a business that actually has returns for us. When we were doing the supper club while also doing the job, our typical Thursdays through the weekend looked like 8 p.m. work gets done, you have dinner, and then from 9 to like 2 in the morning, you're cooking food. That's what we used to do. That's how we were managing the supper club while also managing our jobs.
You know, our jobs were getting more and more complex, and we had more responsibilities. Something that we consistently questioned was that, you know, hey, this is getting to a point where like we have to kind of choose between one or the other. So either we continue to do our jobs or we find a way to sustain ourselves to quit and do this. There are a couple of reasons why we realized that, you know, we can go all in on content and supper clubs. What we kind of found out or like built as we started doing these supper clubs was that there was an inherent interest with brands as well. They were excited, like, you know, a soda company or a cutlery company was really interested in coming in and being a part of our table because we had spent so much time building out the Instagram page. We had some amount of like reach that we could promise brands. The other thing that was really interesting was that we built out this like guest list that people could sign up for, and they would be the first to know when the next event is. And when it reached about 1,000 people was when we realized, hey, like, you know, this is something that we can potentially even see the potential customer base that will come to it. Today we have like 2,000 people on that email list, and that's when we kind of realized that, you know, we can do this. When we were doing the math, like the finances of how can we sustain on the supper club and just content in general, the overall expenses as well as savings components, if we were to put all of those together, that money that we need every month is about 1.5 lakh. Now, to get to 1.5 lakh, I had to get at least 4 supper clubs in a month and have one brand collaboration. And typically brand collaborations come between 75,000 rupees to 1 lakh. And if we're able to get that complete package, we are in the green in terms of sustaining ourselves and having savings or invest in our savings. Now we have SIPs set up for mutual funds. I do portfolio investments in stocks. We also have a couple of ULIPs and the PPF and EPF. So through all of those saving instruments, we had a good corpus of 60 lakhs in savings.
Of course, like there were concerns. There was the typical question of like, will you be able to sustain yourself, or like how will you manage? We were always more excited about it than cautious about it, and we felt that we did have enough savings that we've done ourselves that we would be able to sustain ourselves.
And because we had that, we were confident enough that, you know, if we leave, we can dip into it. Hasn't happened yet, but if it does, if it needs to happen, then that corpus is there. We're also in a stage of life where, like, you know, we don't have children. Our responsibilities are honestly to ourselves. We're in the last ends of like experimentation with what we want to do career-wise before like our responsibilities change. And for that reason, I think this was the best time to do it. So all in all, it isn't just the supper club that supports us monthly. We make about 2.5 lakhs to 3 lakhs depending on the month, and Lost Table makes us about 40% of our revenue. Brand deals and sponsorships comprise about 35%. 15% comes from our webinars, and then about 10% comes from our freelance work. We actually had a worse lifestyle when we were in our jobs because we didn't have control over our time more than anything else. Whereas now, because the day is our own, we get to decide what we want to do and the quality of life that we want to live. I mean, 5 years from now, who knows, honestly, because this is something that we've done independently for the last 6 months. Right now, I'm loving the life that we've built, and I'm loving the work that we do, and we're just gonna keep swimming.